I was setting the table for Christmas dinner when the text came through. Mom, I know you gave me your kidney 4 years ago, but Evan and I need our space this holiday. We're not doing Christmas with you this year. I read it 3 times, standing there in my kitchen in Columbus, holding my phone with one hand and a dinner plate with the other. The plate was from the set my mother gave me in 1985. White porcelain with tiny blue flowers around the rim. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. And subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. I'd been thinking about using the good china for Christmas dinner with Natalie and Evan. Turkey, stuffing, the cranberry sauce Natalie used to love when she was small. The plate slipped from my hand. It didn't break, just clattered against the counter loud enough to make me flinch. I texted back, "Okay, noted." 2 words. That's all I could manage before my hands started shaking. Natalie didn't respond. No explanation. No, "Sorry, Mom," or "maybe next year." Just silence from the daughter I'd given a kidney to when she was 30 years old and dying from polycystic kidney disease. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped her with homework 25 years ago, and stared at that text until the screen went dark. 4 years ago, they'd told me the surgery would take 6 hours. It took 8. Something about complications, unexpected bleeding, my kidney being larger than anticipated. I remember waking up in recovery with a pain so sharp and complete, I thought they'd cut me in half and forgotten to put me back together. The scar runs from my ribcage to my hip. 8 inches of raised pink tissue that itches when it rains. For 3 months after the surgery, I couldn't lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. Couldn't drive. Couldn't work. I'd been a paralegal for 32 years, and I had to take disability leave because I couldn't sit at my desk for more than 20 minutes without the pain making me nauseous. Natalie had come to visit me twice during those 3 months, once in the hospital, once at home. Both times Evan had waited in the car. I remembered asking her, "Honey, doesn't Evan want to come in?" She'd looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her purse strap. "He's busy with work calls, Mom. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. When my late husband Robert was alive, he would have moved mountains to thank someone who saved his wife's life. But Robert died of cancer in 2021, and I'd learned that the rules were different now. The house felt too quiet. I'd spent $340 on groceries for Christmas dinner. The turkey was in the refrigerator, 14 pounds, already brined. I'd bought fresh cranberries, real ones, not canned, because Natalie always said homemade cranberry sauce tasted better. I'd ordered a chocolate cream pie from the bakery on High Street, the expensive place where a single pie cost $28 but tasted like childhood. My phone buzzed again. For a moment, my heart jumped. Maybe Natalie had reconsidered. Maybe she'd realized how cruel that text was. It was my sister Claire. "Heard about Christmas," Natalie told me. "It's probably for the best, Lou. Young couples need their space. You can be a bit much sometimes. A bit much." That's what Claire had been saying about me since we were children. When I cried at our mother's funeral, I was being a bit much. When I worked 2 jobs to pay for Natalie's college after Robert got sick, I was being a bit much. When I donated a kidney to save my daughter's life, apparently, that was also a bit much. I didn't respond to Claire either. I set the phone face down on the table and looked around my kitchen, the Christmas cards I'd hung on the wall with ribbon, the small artificial tree in the corner, decorated with ornaments Natalie had made in elementary school, construction paper stars and glitter angels, most of them falling apart now. But I'd kept every single one. The light was fading outside, 4:30 in the afternoon on December 20th, and already the sky was going gray. I thought about calling Natalie. I thought about driving to her house in Upper Arlington, the house I'd helped them buy with $45,000 from my retirement fund for the down payment. Instead, I pulled up her Instagram on my phone. The most recent post was from 2 hours ago. A photo of her and Evan standing in their kitchen, both of them holding champagne glasses. Evan's arm was around her waist, proprietary and confident. Natalie was smiling, but it looked tight around the edges. The caption read, "Excited for a quiet Christmas at home. Just the 2 of us. Finally, finally." As if I'd been some kind of burden they'd been waiting to shake off. I scrolled back through her photos. Halloween, Thanksgiving, her birthday in September. In every single picture, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Or maybe I'd seen it but refused to acknowledge it. I wasn't in any of them. Not even the background of family gatherings at Claire's house. It was like I'd been edited out, frame by frame, until I'd disappeared completely. There was a noise outside, my neighbor's car pulling into their driveway. Through the window, I could see the Hendersons unloading groceries, their teenage daughter carrying bags, everyone laughing about something. Normal family chaos on a winter evening in Ohio. I looked back at my phone, at Natalie's face in that photo, at Evan's smug expression. And that's when I saw the second thing I'd missed. In the background of the photo, on their kitchen counter, there was a real estate folder, blue and white, with a logo I recognized from the billboards on I-270. Morrison and Associates, the same company that had sold them the house 3 years ago. They were selling the house I'd helped them buy, and they hadn't mentioned it to me. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I walked to the sink and poured myself a glass of water, but my hands were shaking so badly I had to set it down. The surgical scar on my side started to ache, the phantom pain that still showed up when I was stressed. I'd given Natalie a kidney. I'd given her $45,000. I'd given her my time, my energy, my unconditional love for 34 years. And she'd sent me a text message to uninvite me from Christmas. My phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Claire. Also, don't make a big deal about this. Natalie's under a lot of stress. Be the bigger person. I deleted the text without responding. Then I sat back down at my kitchen table, in the growing darkness, and realized something that felt like ice spreading through my chest. I'd been the bigger person my entire life, and all it had gotten me was smaller. 3 days after the text, Claire invited me to lunch. Just us sisters, she said on the phone, her voice too bright, too careful. We haven't caught up in forever. I knew what it was. Natalie had sent her to do damage control. Claire lived in German Village, in one of those renovated brick houses with original hardwood floors and a kitchen that had been featured in Columbus Monthly. Her husband Richard made good money in pharmaceutical sales, and Claire had never let me forget it. I drove there on December 23rd, through streets lined with Christmas decorations. Every house seemed to glow with warmth and family. I felt like a ghost passing through other people's lives. Claire was waiting at the door in a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car payment. She hugged me, and I smelled her expensive perfume, something French with a name I couldn't pronounce. "You look tired," she said. Not hello or how are you. Just that immediate assessment of my deficiency. "I'm fine. Come in." I made chicken salad. The kitchen was immaculate. White marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, fresh flowers in a crystal vase. Claire's life always looked like a catalog. Perfect surfaces hiding whatever mess might exist underneath. She'd set the table with cloth napkins and matching plates. 2 glasses of white wine already poured. I sat down and waited for the real conversation to start. "So," Claire said, settling across from me with a tight smile. "Natalie called me. I figured. She's really upset, Lou. She said you're not respecting her boundaries." I took a sip of wine. It was good wine, probably $30 a bottle. Everything in Claire's life was good. She texted me to uninvite me from Christmas. I responded with 2 words and haven't contacted her since. What boundaries am I violating? Claire picked at her chicken salad. "It's not about this one incident. It's about a pattern. You can be very intense sometimes." Intense. "Natalie says you text her every day. That you show up at her house unannounced. That you're always asking when you can visit, when they're free, what they're doing." I set my fork down carefully. "I text her maybe 3 times a week. I haven't been to her house uninvited in over a year. And I ask about plans because I'd like to see my daughter occasionally. See, that's what I mean." Claire leaned forward, her expression pained and practiced. "You're being defensive. This is why Natalie needs space. You make everything about you." The anger came then, hot and sudden. "I gave her a kidney, Claire, and she's grateful. But that doesn't mean she owes you unlimited access to her life. I'm not asking for unlimited access. I'm asking to be included in Christmas. Claire sighed, the sound of a martyr bearing a great burden. Evan thinks you're too dependent on Natalie. He says it's not healthy for their marriage. There it was. Evan. I should have known he was behind this. What else does Evan think? He thinks you use the kidney donation as emotional leverage, like you're keeping score. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm keeping score? I gave her $45,000 for their house down payment. Did she tell you that? Claire's face flickered with something, surprise maybe, or discomfort. That was your choice. Nobody forced you. I did it because she's my daughter and she needed help. Just like I gave her a kidney because she was dying. But apparently, according to Evan, that makes me manipulative. Don't twist my words. Claire refilled her wine glass. Look, all I'm saying is that young couples need space to build their marriage. You had that with Robert. Why can't you give Natalie the same thing? Robert's parents lived 2 blocks away and came to dinner every Sunday. We never uninvited them from Christmas. That was different. How? Claire didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together in that way she'd done since we were children. The look that meant I was being unreasonable, and she was being patient with me. We ate in silence for a moment. The chicken salad tasted like expensive ingredients and no love. Through the window, I could see Claire's neighbor hanging lights on his porch, his kids running around the yard. There's something else, Claire said finally. Natalie mentioned you've been looking at her Instagram a lot. Evan says it's creepy. Creepy? She posts publicly. I'm her mother. He showed her the analytics. You look at every single post within minutes of her posting it. My face went hot. Is that a crime now? Being interested in my daughter's life? It's obsessive, Lou. That's what they're trying to tell you. You need to back off and let them breathe. I pushed my plate away. Did Natalie actually say all this? Or is this Evan speaking through her? Claire's expression shifted, defensive now. They're a unit. What Evan thinks, Natalie thinks. That's how marriage works. No, I said quietly. That's how control works. Oh, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being observant. 4 years ago, Natalie called me every day. We had lunch twice a week. She told me everything. Then she married Evan. And slowly, piece by piece, I've been cut out of her life. And now you're sitting here telling me it's my fault for noticing. Claire stood up and started clearing the plates, her movements sharp and irritated. You're impossible to talk to. This is exactly why Natalie needs distance. You can't accept that she's grown up and moved on. Moved on from what? From having a mother? From being your entire world. Claire turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw something like pity in her eyes. Lou, you need to build your own life. Find your own friends, your own interests. Stop making Natalie responsible for your happiness. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. The surgical scar on my side was aching again, that deep pull that never fully went away. I have my own life. I have my work and my friends and my book club. What I don't have is a daughter who wants me at Christmas. And you're telling me that's my fault. I'm telling you to respect her decision. Her decision or Evan's? Claire didn't answer. She just walked to the door and held it open. I drove home in a fog. The streets were full of last-minute Christmas shoppers, families loading gifts into cars, everyone moving through a world that made sense to them. I felt like I was watching from behind glass. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Bancroft, this is Evan Hughes. I think we need to establish some clear boundaries going forward. Natalie has asked me to handle communication with you for now. She needs space to process her feelings without pressure. I'm sure you understand. Also, regarding the money you gave us for the house, we're moving forward with a sale, and we'll be consulting with our attorney about how to handle that transaction. I'll be in touch. I read it 3 times. Cold, corporate, completely devoid of anything resembling family warmth. He was treating me like a business problem to be managed. I sat on my couch in the dark, my phone screen the only light in the room. Outside, I could hear carolers somewhere down the street, their voices bright and cheerful, singing about peace on earth and goodwill toward men. And I realized that Evan wasn't just pushing me away, he was erasing me. Systematically, deliberately. with Natalie's apparent consent. The question was why? What did he have to gain from isolating my daughter from her own mother? I thought about that real estate folder in the background of Natalie's Instagram photo, about the attorney he'd just mentioned, about the careful, calculated cruelty of his text message. And for the first time since that Christmas text arrived, I felt something other than hurt. I felt cold, focused rage. If Evan wanted to play legal games with my $45,000, he was about to discover that I kept very good records. Every check, every transfer, every conversation about that money had been documented because I used to be a paralegal, and I knew how family agreements could turn ugly. But more than that, I wanted to know what else he was hiding, because men who isolated women from their families usually had something to protect. And I was done being the bigger person. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray. I woke up at 6:30 out of habit, the same time I'd woken up every Christmas for 34 years to start the turkey and watch Natalie tear through her presents. The house was silent. No footsteps running down the hallway. No excited squeals. Just me and the empty rooms and the artificial tree in the corner with its faded construction paper ornaments. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, still in my bathrobe. Through the window, I could see the Hendersons' house lit up, shadows moving behind curtains, family gathering for breakfast, normal life continuing for everyone but me. My phone sat on the table, screen dark. I'd checked it twice already. No messages. No "Merry Christmas, Mom" from Natalie. Nothing from Claire. Just automated texts from my dentist's office and a spam call about my car's extended warranty. I thought about calling Natalie. My finger hovered over her contact for a full minute before I set the phone down. Evan had made it clear. All communication goes through him now, and I wasn't going to beg. Instead, I pulled out the box I kept in the hall closet. Old photo albums, back from when we printed pictures instead of storing them on phones. I flipped through pages of Natalie's childhood. Her first day of kindergarten, gap-toothed and proud. Her 10th birthday party, chocolate cake smeared on her face. Her high school graduation, me and Robert standing on either side of her, all of us grinning like we'd won something. There was a letter tucked between the pages. I'd forgotten about it. Natalie had written it the night before her kidney transplant surgery 4 years ago. Her handwriting was shaky, scared. "Mom, I know you're doing this because you love me. I want you to know that I see all the sacrifices you've made my whole life, working 2 jobs to pay for my college, taking care of Dad when he was sick, never complaining, never making me feel like a burden. You are the strongest person I know. I promise I'll never forget what you're giving me. I love you more than anything, Natalie." I read it 3 times. My coffee went cold while I stared at those words. I promise I'll never forget. 4 years. That's how long it took for the promise to break. My phone buzzed. For a moment, hope flared bright and desperate. Maybe Natalie had changed her mind. Maybe she was calling to say Merry Christmas, to invite me over for dinner, to remember who I used to be to her. It was Claire. A group text to me and 3 other people I didn't recognize. Family friends, probably. The message just said, "Merry Christmas," with a photo attached. Claire's dining room, table set with an elaborate spread. In the background, I could see people gathered in the living room. And there, on the couch, was Natalie. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. Evan was next to her, his arm around her shoulders, possessive, protective, like he'd won something. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. She wasn't miserable. She wasn't missing me. She was at Claire's house, having Christmas with everyone except me, and she looked fine. I turned off my phone, put it in a drawer. I couldn't look at it anymore. The day passed in slow, heavy hours. I tried to read, tried to watch a movie. Everything felt hollow. Around 3 in the afternoon, I took out the turkey I'd bought, 14 pounds of bird that nobody would eat. I thought about cooking it anyway, just to fill the house with something that smelled like normalcy. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Robert was buried. The place was empty on Christmas Day. just me and the rows of headstones and the wind cutting through the bare trees. I stood in front of Robert's grave, my hands shoved in my coat pockets. "I don't know what I did wrong," I said out loud. "I gave her everything, and it wasn't enough." Robert didn't answer. He'd been gone for 3 years, and I still sometimes forgot he wasn't coming home. I used to tell him everything. He would have known what to do about Natalie. He would have talked to her, made her see reason, protected me from this. But Robert had left me alone to figure this out, and I was failing. I drove home as the sun was setting. The streets were empty now, everyone inside with their families. I felt like the last person on earth. Back in my kitchen, I opened my laptop. I hadn't looked at Natalie's social media since Claire's lunch, but I needed to understand what was happening. I needed to see if there were clues I'd missed. Her Instagram was full of photos from today. Christmas at Claire's house. Natalie and Evan opening gifts. Claire hugging Natalie like they were best friends. A group photo of everyone gathered around the table, raising wine glasses. The caption, "Grateful for family traditions and the people who matter most." The people who matter most. I wasn't in the photo. I scrolled back through her posts from the past year. October, September, August, looking for the moment I'd been erased. And I found it. July 4th. There was a photo from a neighborhood barbecue. Natalie, Evan, Claire, Richard, a bunch of people I didn't know. I'd been invited to that barbecue. I'd made my famous potato salad and driven to their neighborhood with it wrapped carefully in my car. But I wasn't in any of the photos. Not one. I'd been there. I'd stayed for 3 hours, and somehow I'd been edited out of the entire day. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking again. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I logged into the bank account Robert and I had shared, the one with my retirement savings. I pulled up the transaction history and found the wire transfer from 3 years ago. $45,000 to Natalie Hughes. The memo line said, "House down payment, gift from mom." Gift. I'd called it a gift. But looking at it now, in the cold light of Christmas night, I realized it had been a mistake. Not the money itself, but the way I'd framed it. No contract, no paperwork, no legal protection. Just trust and love, and the assumption that family meant something. I took a screenshot of the transaction, saved it to a folder on my desktop. Then I went through my emails and found every conversation I'd had with Natalie about the money, printed them out, put them in a manila folder. I wasn't sure what I was planning, but if Evan wanted to play legal games, I needed to be ready. It was almost midnight when I finally turned off the lights and went to bed. Lying there in the dark, I could hear the wind rattling the windows. The house felt too big and too empty. But for the first time all day, I didn't feel defeated. I felt something colder, something harder, something that had been growing since the moment I read that text from Natalie. I felt done. Done being the good mother who never complained. Done being the bigger person. Done sacrificing pieces of myself for a daughter who'd thrown me away like I was nothing. Tomorrow, I was going to figure out what Evan was really after. And I was going to protect myself. Because nobody else was going to do it for me. The day after Christmas, I called an old colleague from my paralegal days. Janet Morse had worked in family law for 20 years before retiring. We'd stayed in touch, meeting for coffee every few months to complain about our knees and trade book recommendations. She was practical, sharp, and didn't believe in sugarcoating anything. "Lou," she said when she picked up, "how was your Christmas?" "Complicated. I need advice." We met at a diner on Broad Street. Janet looked the same as always, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She ordered black coffee and listened while I explained everything. The kidney donation, the $45,000, the text message, Evan's threat about attorneys. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, stirring sugar into her coffee. "You documented the money transfer?" she asked. "Every penny. Emails, bank statements, the memo line said it was a gift." "That's a problem. Gifts are legally irrevocable in Ohio unless you can prove undue influence or fraud." She looked at me over her glasses. "But that's not what you're really worried about, is it?" Evan's isolating her, Systematically. And I don't understand why. Janet tapped her spoon against the cup. In my experience, when a man works that hard to cut a woman off from her support system, he's either controlling or hiding something. Sometimes both. She paused. You want to know what he's hiding? Yes. That's going to cost money. Private investigators don't work for free. How much? Depends on what you want to know. Basic background check, financial records, that's maybe $1,500. Surveillance, deeper digging, could be $5,000 or more. I thought about my savings account, about the money I'd set aside for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency. Can you recommend someone? Janet pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Mark Reeves. He's discreet, thorough, and he doesn't ask questions you don't want to answer. Tell him I sent you. 2 days later, I was sitting in Mark Reeves's office in a strip mall off Route 315. The office was small and smelled like old coffee. Mark was maybe 55, balding, with tired eyes that had seen too many family secrets. I explained what I needed. Background on Evan Hughes. Financial records if possible. Any red flags that might explain why he was pushing me out of Natalie's life. How far back do you want me to go? Mark asked. As far as you need to. This is your daughter's husband. You sure you want to open this door? Sometimes what we find makes things worse, not better. I'm sure. He quoted me $3,000 up front. I wrote the check without hesitating. Give me a week, he said. That week felt like the longest of my life. I went to work, came home, avoided calls from Claire. I didn't look at Natalie's social media. I didn't text her. I waited. Mark called me on January 4th. Mrs. Bancroft, we need to meet. Today, if possible. His voice had that careful neutrality that meant he'd found something. I drove to his office through cold rain. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, my mind racing through possibilities. Debt, gambling, another woman. Something bad enough that Evan needed to isolate Natalie before she found out. Mark was waiting with a manila folder on his desk, thick with documents. I'll start with the basics, he said, opening the folder. Evan Hughes, 36 years old, works as an associate at Brennan & Cole, a mid-sized corporate law firm downtown. Makes approximately $120,000 a year. On paper, everything looks fine. On paper. He pulled out a document. But when I dug deeper, I found some interesting things. First, he's in debt. Significant debt. Credit cards maxed out at $67,000. Personal loan from a private lender for $30,000. And he's behind on payments. My stomach dropped. Natalie doesn't know. I don't think so. The accounts are in his name only. He's been hiding it. Mark pulled out another document. Second issue, his job. 3 months ago, his firm put him on a performance improvement plan. That's usually a precursor to termination. Why? Client complaints, missed deadlines. According to my source inside the firm, he's been distracted and making mistakes. They're giving him until March to shape up or they'll let him go. I stared at the papers, my mind spinning. Evan was in financial trouble and about to lose his job. That's why he wanted to sell the house. There's more, Mark said quietly. He pulled out a photograph. I started surveillance 4 days ago. This was taken yesterday at the Lindy's restaurant in German Village. The photo showed Evan sitting at a table. Across from him was a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, expensive-looking suit. They were leaning close, his hand covering hers on the table. Who is she? Miranda Cole. She's a partner at his law firm. Married, 2 kids. I've got 3 more photos from the same lunch. This wasn't a business meeting. The anger came cold and sharp. Does Natalie know? I doubt it. They met at noon on a Tuesday. Natalie was at work. I checked. I looked at the photo again. Evan's face relaxed and smiling in a way I'd never seen him look at my daughter, the woman's hand under his, the intimate lean of their bodies. What do you need from me? I asked. That depends on what you want to do with this information. I thought about Natalie, about the text message, about being erased from Christmas and edited out of family photos, about Evan's cold corporate message threatening legal action. Can you get more evidence of the affair? Probably. Give me another week. Do it. Mark nodded. One more thing. I pulled property records on your daughter's house. They listed it with Morrison and Associates 3 weeks ago. Asking price is $385,000. If they sell for that, after paying off the mortgage, they'll net about $110,000. Exactly enough to cover Evan's debts and buy himself time before his job fell apart. He's using her, I said. Looks that way. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I gathered the photos and documents, my hands steady now. I'm going to protect my daughter, whether she wants me to or not. When I got home, my phone had 2 missed calls from Natalie. No voicemail, just the calls. I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment. Then I called Mark back. Get me everything you can on Evan Hughes. Phone records if possible, bank statements, every piece of evidence that shows what he's really doing. That's going to cost more. I don't care. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Natalie's face in that Christmas photo. She'd looked happy. But I knew her. I'd raised her. And underneath that smile, I'd seen something I recognized. She looked tired, worn down, like someone carrying weight they couldn't quite name. Evan was burying her in his secrets, and I was going to dig them all up. Because this wasn't about Christmas dinner anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or being uninvited to family gatherings. This was about my daughter being manipulated by a man who was using her as a solution to his failing life, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Mark called me back 6 days later with phone records and more photos. Evan and Miranda had met 3 more times. Text messages between them were carefully coded but obvious. Can't wait to see you, and thinking about yesterday, and we need to talk about our situation. I put everything in a folder. Photos, bank statements showing Evan's debts, the performance improvement plan from his law firm that Mark's source had leaked, text message screenshots, all of it organized chronologically, documented like a legal case, because that's what this was, a case I was building to save my daughter. The question was how to approach her. Evan had her convinced I was the problem. If I came at her too hard, she'd shut down. If I showed her the evidence without context, she might not believe it. I needed her alone, away from Evan's influence. On January 12th, I took a chance. I knew Natalie worked from home on Wednesdays. I knew Evan went into the office on Wednesdays because Mark had been tracking his schedule. I drove to their house in Upper Arlington at 10 in the morning and knocked on the door. Natalie answered in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked startled to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Can we talk? Please, just 20 minutes. She hesitated, her hand tight on the doorframe. I could see the conflict in her face. Whatever Evan had told her, part of her still remembered who I used to be to her. Evan said I shouldn't. I know what Evan said, but I'm your mother, and I need to show you something. She let me in. The house looked different than I remembered. Cleaner, colder, like a magazine spread instead of a home. We sat in the living room, Natalie perched on the edge of the couch, her body language defensive. I set the folder on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" she asked. "The truth about your husband." Her face hardened. "Mom, if this is some kind of—" "Natalie, please, just look." I opened the folder and showed her the bank statements first. Evan's credit card debt, the personal loan, the missed payments. Her eyes widened as she read the numbers. "This can't be right. Evan handles our finances. He said everything was fine. He lied." I showed her the performance plan from his law firm. She read it slowly, her face going pale. "He told me he got a promotion last month. He said they were increasing his salary. He's about to be fired." Her hands were shaking now. I hated doing this to her, hated watching her world crack open. But she needed to know. Then I showed her the photos. Evan and Miranda at the restaurant, the way they leaned together, his hand on hers. Natalie stared at them for a long time, her breathing shallow. "Who is she?" "Miranda Cole, a partner at his firm. Married." "How long have you known about this?" "A week. I hired a private investigator." Natalie looked up at me, her eyes red and wet. "You've been spying on my husband?" "I've been protecting you. Because someone needed to." She stood up suddenly, pacing across the room. "This is insane. You hired someone to follow Evan because I didn't invite you to Christmas? Do you hear how crazy that sounds?" I hired someone because your husband threatened me with legal action over the $45,000 I gave you, because he's been systematically pushing me out of your life, because I could see something was wrong and you wouldn't talk to me. Maybe I wouldn't talk to you because you're suffocating me." Her voice cracked. "You text me constantly. You show up unannounced. You make everything about you and your feelings. Is that what Evan told you?" "It's what I feel." I stood up too, my own anger rising. "I text you 3 times a week. I came to your house today for the first time in over a year. Everything you just said are his words, Natalie, not yours. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain to me why you're not in any family photos from the last 6 months. Explain why you cut me out of Christmas. Explain why you're selling the house I helped you buy without telling me." She went quiet, her arms wrapped around herself. "Evan said we needed a fresh start. He said the house had bad energy. Bad energy or bad debt? Stop it. Natalie, he's using you. He's drowning in debt and about to lose his job, and he's selling your house to save himself, and he's pushing me away because he knows I'd see through it." She sank back onto the couch, her face in her hands. For a moment, the only sound was her ragged breathing. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered. I sat next to her, close but not touching. "Believe the evidence. Believe the numbers. They don't lie. But people do." She looked at me, her eyes desperate. "How do I know you're not manipulating me? How do I know this isn't just you trying to control my marriage?" The question hit like a slap. "You think I would fabricate financial documents and fake photos just to win an argument? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." My chest ached. "Natalie, I gave you a kidney. Do you remember that?" "Of course I remember." "Do you remember what you wrote in the letter before the surgery?" "You promised you'd never forget what I'd sacrificed for you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "That's not fair. None of this is fair. But I need you to look at me and tell me honestly. Do you think I would hurt you deliberately? Do you think I'm capable of that?" She was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "No, then trust me now, please." She picked up the photos again, studying them with fresh eyes. I watched her face change as the reality settled in. The way her jaw tightened. The way her hands clenched. "He's been lying to me," she said. Not a question. A realization. Yes. About money. About his job. About this woman. Yes. "And he made me push you away so you wouldn't find out." "I think so." She looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw my daughter. Not Evan's wife. Not the stranger who'd texted me on December 20th. Just Natalie. Scared and hurt and finally willing to see what had been in front of her. "I'm sorry, Mom." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry. He told me you were jealous of our marriage, that you couldn't let go, that you were trying to come between us, and I believed him." I pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against me, sobbing. "I should have seen it. I should have known. He's good at what he does. That's how manipulation works." We sat like that for a long time, her crying, me holding her like I used to when she was small and the world felt too big. Finally, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. "What do I do now?" "You confront him, with me there, tonight. He'll deny everything. Then we show him the evidence, and we tell him it's over." She nodded slowly. "I'm scared. I know, but I'm not going anywhere. Not this time." That evening when Evan came home, Natalie and I were waiting in the living room. The folder was on the coffee table. He saw me first, and his face went cold. "What is she doing here?" "Sit down, Evan," Natalie said. Her voice was steady now, strong. "Natalie, we talked about boundaries. Sit down." He sat, and we destroyed his lies, one document at a time. Evan tried to leave 3 times during that conversation. Each time, Natalie told him to sit down. By the end, he wasn't denying anything anymore. He was negotiating. "The debt isn't as bad as it looks," he said, his voice tight. "I can fix this." "With my house?" Natalie's voice was ice. "With money from selling the home my mother helped us buy?" "Our house. And yes, if necessary." I stayed quiet, letting Natalie handle it. This was her marriage to end, not mine to destroy. But I was there, solid and steady beside her, the way I should have been all along. "What about Miranda?" Natalie asked. Evan's face flushed. "That's nothing. A work friendship that got misconstrued. Your hand was on hers. We were having a difficult conversation about a case. Natalie held up one of the text messages. What case requires you to text? I can't stop thinking about yesterday. He had no answer for that. I want you out, Natalie said finally. Tonight. You can't be serious. Natalie, we can work through this. Marriage counseling, financial planning, whatever you need, I need you to leave. Evan looked at me then, and I saw real hatred in his eyes. This is your fault. You poisoned her against me. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself. He stood up, his hands shaking with rage. You're a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see your daughter happy. So you manufactured this entire crisis to get her back under your control. The bank statements are real, I said. The performance plan is real. The photos are real. I didn't manufacture anything. I just exposed what you were hiding. You had me followed. You invaded my privacy. You threatened me with legal action and isolated my daughter from her family. I protected myself and her. Evan grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door. This isn't over. I'll fight the divorce. I'll take half of everything, including the house your precious mommy paid for. Try it, I said. I documented every penny of that $45,000. My lawyer is very interested in how you pressured Natalie to sell the house without my knowledge while you were hiding debt and committing adultery. Ohio is a fault state for divorce. You won't get half. You'll get nothing. His face went white. Natalie stood up, her arms crossed. Pack a bag, Evan. You can get the rest of your things later with a police escort if necessary. 20 minutes later, we watched him drive away. Natalie stood at the window until his taillights disappeared. Then she turned to me and started crying again. Not the desperate sobs from earlier. Quieter tears. Relief mixed with grief. I wasted 3 years on him, she said. You didn't waste anything. You learned. I should have listened to you from the beginning. You never liked him. I didn't trust him. There's a difference. I put my arm around her shoulders. But you loved him. And that wasn't wrong. He was wrong. Not you. We spent that night talking. Really talking. For the first time in over a year. She told me how Evan had slowly convinced her that I was overbearing. How he'd made her feel guilty every time she wanted to see me. How he'd turned her sister Claire into an ally by complaining about my interference. How isolated she'd felt, but couldn't name why. He made me believe I was choosing independence, she said. But really, I was choosing his control over your love. You didn't know. I should have known. She looked at me, her eyes red, but clear. I should have known when you donated your kidney and he couldn't even come inside to thank you. I should have known when he scheduled our honeymoon during your birthday. I should have known when he deleted your number from his phone and told me it was an accident. He was careful. That's how abusers work. Was he abusing me? Financial abuse. Emotional abuse. Isolation. Yes. She was quiet for a long time. Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm your mother. That's not how this works. The divorce moved quickly once Evan realized he had no leverage. He signed the papers in March without a fight. By then, Mark's investigation had uncovered even more. Evan had been funneling money from joint accounts into private investments that had failed. He'd forged Natalie's signature on a loan application, and Miranda Cole had filed a harassment complaint against him at work, which led to his termination in February. Natalie kept the house. Evan got his debt and his ruined reputation. In April, she refinanced and paid me back the $45,000. I didn't ask for it, but she insisted. You gave me a kidney, she said. The least I can do is return your money with interest. But more than the money, she gave me back something I'd thought was lost. My place in her life. We started having dinner every Sunday. She called me just to talk. She apologized to my face, in writing, and through actions that proved she meant it. On Mother's Day, she showed up at my door with flowers and a card that said, "Thank you for saving my life," twice. I understood what she meant. The kidney 4 years ago, the investigation 6 months ago. Both times I'd given her something she needed to survive. We were sitting on my porch that evening, watching the sunset, when she asked, "Do you forgive me?" There's nothing to forgive. Mom, I looked at her, really looked at her, my daughter, who'd gotten lost and found her way back. I forgive you, but more importantly, I hope you forgive yourself. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm working on it. Claire eventually apologized too, though it took her longer. She admitted that Evan had manipulated her as well, convincing her I was the problem. Our relationship would never be what it was, but we were speaking again. Family dinners were awkward but improving. As for me, I learned something important. I'd spent so much of my life being the good mother, the selfless mother, the mother who never complained. I'd thought that's what love required. Endless sacrifice without expectation of return. But that text message from Natalie, brutal as it was, taught me something valuable. I deserved to be treated with respect. I deserved to have boundaries honored. I deserved to be valued, not just for what I could give, but for who I was. When I replied, "Okay, noted," on that December night, I thought I was surrendering, but really I was drawing a line. I was saying silently that I wouldn't beg for my place in my daughter's life, that I had dignity worth protecting. And somehow, that cold moment of self-respect led to everything else, to the investigation, to the truth, to getting my daughter back, not because I fought for her, but because I fought for myself first. On New Year's Eve, almost exactly 1 year after that terrible Christmas, Natalie and I stood in my kitchen making dinner together. The same kitchen where I'd read that text. The same table where I'd felt invisible. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The kidney, I mean. Knowing how I treated you after?" I thought about it honestly, about the pain, the scar, the months of recovery, the years of feeling erased. "No," I said, "because you're my daughter, and that kidney is still saving your life, just like you saved mine by coming back." She hugged me then, tight and long, and in that moment, I felt complete. Not because I'd won some battle, but because I'd learned to value myself enough to fight for what I deserved: respect, dignity, love without conditions, and a seat at the table I'd earned.